Hey everybody, this is Erica with Mappy Hour Live, and we're super excited for you guys to be joining today. Just to let you know, I'm jumping in for Sarah. We've had some outages across the country with internet, of course, we're in COVID. So yeah, I'm excited to be kind of guest hosting today. For those of you who are new to the Mappy Hour community, we usually meet in person in various chapters around the country. Today, we're doing a live version, which will continue throughout the month and into next month as well. You can view our live streams after on mappyhour.org, and they're also being live streamed right now on Facebook as well as YouTube. This series tonight is a part of a longer series of bikepacking and touring topics. And we're building out a library of resources for people to learn more about bikepacking here on our site. So keep tuned for that. And I also just wanted to give a quick shout out before we start and bring on our speaker today to Sierra Nevada Brewing. Thanks so much to Sierra Nevada for sponsoring today, and also personally for myself for making great beer that I usually drink after a hike or out on the trail. We have one more event coming up soon on August 12th, talking about long distance bike tours. And today, as you tune in for today's chat, make sure you're live chatting throughout if you'd like on Facebook in the comments or on mappyhour.org in today's event, and we'll be checking in. Just a quick ask for everyone to be as respectful as you would at an in-person event in the chat, and leave some questions for Judi, our speaker, and we'll get to those at the end, and she'll comment on them throughout. So without further ado, today's speaker, this is Judi Desire. She is a New York native. She fell in love with cycling, and it's propelled her literally across the world. She also started Uptown Boogie bicycle advocacy, and she'll talk about that today too. And she's going to share stories and lots of stories about what she's doing in the bikepacking world and bike touring world and how she got here. So I'll bring in Judi now. Hey, Judi.
Hello. Hi, how are you?
Good. Thanks for being with us. Yeah,
yes.
Super excited.
Me too.
Cool. So I'm going to jump out and let you present, and give a shout if you need anything.
Okay. Yay. My presentation. Hi, I'm Judi Desire. Actually, the first name is Judith, but I prefer Judi. Last name Desiree, Caribbean, French, Desire, if you like to say it in a French accent. And today I'm discussing about my bike touring experience around the world. It was not a attempt to do the world. It was more of a exploration that just led me to one country after the other. And you will see on the photo are the bicycles that took me around the world. There's actually two. On the left is me, and I'm in, I believe, Europe. And the bicycle is called Betsy. She was my first bike. I learned to ride a bike in 2010. It wasn't until 2012 where it just propelled and took off. And that is Betsy. The first bike is a trek bike. And she's there twice. There was a lot of adjustments to the bike. And finally, the bike that I tour the most with now is Buddy. And Buddy is also a trek bike, which is a 520 bike. Nice line. So yeah, so 2010, I accidentally learned to ride a bike. I was speaking to a supervisor at my job and just told her I want to explore Europe and I want to get around and just see something different, leave New York. And she said, "Oh, that's so amazing for you to go to Europe for the first time. You can bike in Amsterdam and you can bike in Germany and you could do all this cycling and swimming in the Mediterranean." And my jaw dropped. I just thought, wait, it's not New York City. There's no trains and buses. Like I have to get around on a bicycle. And I just kind of had a little panic moment. And I thought, oh my God, I got to learn how to ride a bike. And two of my best friends taught me how to ride a bike. The old-fashioned way, I call it, is when you're holding the back of the saddle. So you can imagine me, a grown woman, with another grown person holding the back of the saddle and getting me started and balancing. And from there, I took off and I went on my bike exploration with just a little understanding of bike touring. Uh, now, my tours usually begin, or I should say, my travel begins on my birthday. I am born in December. I'm the last day of the year. I'm December 30. And of course, I'm that child that is sandwiched between Christmas and New Year's, which also means the most expensive time of the year when you want to travel. And it's also the time where people are broke. So they try to give you one gift instead of two, and it's tell you, "Oh, Merry Christmas, Happy Birthday," and I'm like, "Oh." So I decided 10 years ago, a plus, that on my birthday, as a gift to myself, I will travel. And it was in 2012, I decided my first tour would be Brazil. And it was to visit my friend who lives in Rio. We met in Spain and we had a good time, and I kept in touch with her, and she just happened to message me and say, "Hi, how are you? What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm fine." And she's like, "Oh, when are you going to come to Brazil?" And that same moment I said, "Hold on." And I looked for a plane ticket, and at the time you required a visa. I did the process, and the day before I went on my tour, I told my friends, I'm going to Brazil and I'm going to bike Brazil. And that was the beginning of my first tour. Uh, then, as you could see, it went a little crazy. 2013 to now, I've traveled South America was my first tour. I went in Spain and did the Camino de Santiago de Compostela. I ventured to Texas and Houston, a little short tour. I also decided to bike from my home in Harlem to Quebec and Montreal to see my cousin that moved from Haiti to Montreal with his family. And I thought, I'm going to come and see you by bicycle. Then it just took off. I went to Portland, Oregon to learn how to repair bikes and got on a tour and biked from Washington all the way down to the end of California. Hawaii led me to Australia, New Zealand, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Philippines, Taiwan. I accidentally went on a tour in Cuba, and I'll explain how accidental these trips become. That was Costa Rica, the Galapagos Islands, Ecuador, South Africa. That was also a accidental tour that took me across to from Cape Town to Port Elizabeth, and from Elizabeth I continued to Johannesburg and Mauritius. I was as another accidental, and UK. The Louisiana, because I just was curious about the Creole, and just recently Puerto Rico, and for my years. So as I mentioned, my first bike was Betsy. She was amazing. She got her name because when I went on a tour, I didn't know what bike I should take. I didn't know what is a bike, what is a touring bike. I didn't know what that was. When I heard about touring was me searching for information on how to commute in Brazil. And I saw a blog of two guys who said they were biking Brazil, and they used the term bike touring, and I never heard that word before. And I went to the bike shop that I purchased my bike, and I said, "I want to bike tour." Like, that's just, this is a new name, and I want to do it. And they said, okay, you're gonna need new pedals, you're gonna need handlebars, and you're gonna need a rack, and you're gonna need a new seat, and you're gonna need and need. And I said, oh my God, I thought I was just gonna take a bike in a plane. And before you know it, that bike that was not meant for touring became my first touring bike, and that was my Trek. Then in 2014, Betsy was in an accident, and it was too damaged for repair. It was a sad moment for me because I also was injured in a bike accident, and it basically totaled Betsy. She's still a frame hanging on a wall. She hasn't gone anywhere. She's still with me. And Betsy now had a sibling called Buddy. And Buddy is also a Trek, a 520. And her first experience in bike tour was seeing Hawaii. And then a accidental bike purchase that became a touring bike that was not meant for touring is my Giant. That's Bernadette, and Bernadette is my mom's sister. I don't know if you notice a pattern, but there's names to the bicycles, and they all start with B because bicycle starts with B. So all the names started with a B. And it was a Giant live, and she got me through Cuba. And so I'm not sure if I mentioned, but many of these tours I took alone, and it was kind of like, yeah, intentional, but not intentional. I just am a single child, and I just wanted to just see it by myself. I didn't tour with a group or with other people. But I did get a chance to tour with 11 cyclists in Brazil from Florianopolis to Porto Alegre. And that was my first bike tour with other uh, riders who are self-contained and fully loaded. So they helped me understand how to get up hills. Many of them held my back and helped me go up. And it was a blessing in disguise. I met the group by word of mouth from someone else who told me that there was a group biking, and I joined them, and it was the greatest experience I ever had. Um, so that was my one tour with a group. And get to know your bicycle. Oh, I became a engineer overnight. It was a lot of like learning how to repair on my own. And when I started learning to ride a bike, I didn't feel so welcomed in bike shops. I felt either I was talked down to or mansplained about the bike. And my background is a tech. I major in computer science, and I do front end development. And it's very hands on, very logistic kind of thinking. How does this work? Why is this happening? How do I fix the error? It was I very much have this mindset. And when I went to bike shops and I said something's wrong, what's going on, and they're like, oh, okay, okay, and they took the bike, and I was just like, but where are you going? And or they didn't understand what I was saying. So I thought to myself, all right, it's time to learn your bicycle on your own. Uh, and with that, it led me to learn how to ride, learn how to repair my bike on my own. I went to Portland, Oregon, to a bicycle institute to learn how to understand my bike. I went as far as going to a school in another state so I can learn how to fix a bike. And I thought, if I'm going to hit the road, I want to be self-sufficient. I want to be able to know how to change my brakes, how to change a tire, how to fix any issues, and when to know to throw in the towel and get more professional support. In my bike tours, the first thing I looked for was bike co-ops. And that's the first thing. Whenever I get to the city, I just ask, where's the bike co-op? And that's the time that I use to make any repairs to my bike. These are just some of the locations I went to that had bike co-ops, and they were open and free to the public. And that's the places where I got my chain fixed. I did on my own, and my cables, if it was ripped, renew housing, changing my handlebar tape. And I wanted to do it all by myself with the help of others. And I felt the bike co-op was a better environment for me in learning how to fix a bike. Um, the one thing that I can say that I learned was fixing a flat. There was tons of flats along the way, a lot of glass, a lot of needles, a lot of thorns. It was just, I had a tour where I had 10 patches on a tube. Like I had to, because I ran out of inner tubes, and I just kept patching it. And doing that meant taking everything off the bike, taking the tire off, taking everything, and you could see it's in pieces to repair this flat. And little did I know, I did not have to do that. It took me probably a few years into touring where I met this young man who has uh, um, a motorcycle repair shop. And I had an issue, and no patch worked. I don't know why. I couldn't patch it. And I was told he was the rubber man. He knew and can make rubber and can fix and create and patch it, just putting rubber on top of it. And what he did was simply, as you can see, just use like a tool, take the tire out while it's still attached to the bike, pull out the inner tube, did whatever, pressed the rubber and put it back, and that was it. And I said, what? I said, wait a minute. All this time I've been taking off the tire and I didn't have to. And ever since then, if you ever have a flat and you see me on the road, I will never take your tire out. I will always repair it right on the bike. And that was the biggest lesson I ever learned in bike repair, was from biking in Mauritius and learning how to repair my bike without taking it apart. So when you learn to repair your inner tube, you have to also learn how to take it off, because you may have to completely take the tube out. But then there's other patches or fixes you can do with the tire still on. And that was that. And now, the scariest thing is to take your baby into pieces. And it was scary at first. It was just like, there's a lot of screws. I can't lose a screw. And but I realized I had to really get comfortable with taking my handlebars off, my pedals off. And it wasn't until Buddy came along, which is a steel bike, where I installed SNS couplings. With my tours, as you can see, it's a lot of like biking to island, biking on islands, biking on coastlines, which requires you to fly and fly with your bike. And as you probably have well know, that the fees are ridiculous. There is many airline companies that have seen the light of the way, seen the way, and have reduced the price or made having a bike completely free to fly with. But I basically, my full size bike is in that bag. I make it as small as possible. As you can see, I travel very light. So those 2 bags can go forever. That's 10 months right there. 2 bags and a messenger bag and a tent. And that is it. And I try to make it as light as possible. So it's in what they have as the plaid bag. It's like you would find in many dollar stores. It's a large, extra large, and it fits my bike. And the cardboard that's on top on the table is what I use to wrap the bike around. And if you ever want to learn about traveling with your bike, you can look up this website, snsmachine.com, and learn more about SNS couplings. Uh, and as I mentioned, I travel with my home. These are my houses. I always, on every tour, even if it's a day tour, a tent comes with me because you just never know. I had 3 homes. As you can see, a lot of modeling happened. The first one there was a gift given to me by a friend in Hawaii. He was moving and had a tent and gave it to me. And I didn't realize there was a difference between a summer tent, a rain tent, and I didn't know. I just said, thank you. And I took the tent, and I had to put this blue top on tarp because I realized when it rains, it leaks. So I had to buy a separate piece to put over it. But that took me through many tours. It was many years when I had it until it started like kind of falling apart because I abused everything to the fullest. When the first home was coming apart, a lot of leaks. Then another person gifted me a tent. They had finished their bike tour and just didn't want to carry it back. And I took the tent and the green tent, and that traveled with me through large parts of Southeast Asia, and I used it. It was great. The first tent was a 1 person. I realized a 2 person tent was great because I can actually put my bike in the tent with me. I'm little. I'm 5'2", so I can fit with my bike. And it wasn't until finally I upgraded to a more fancier tent. I had a little mansion now, and it has a nice little door coming out, and it's very fancy. And these are my homes, and I enjoy camping. And there's many times I had to pick between buying food or paying for a hotel. I purchase food. And so, as I mentioned, when I carry everything with me, I build my bike at the airport. As you can see with the SNS couplings, it packs really nicely, and the bike becomes my taxi to wherever I'm going. And it wasn't until I went to Mauritius, and it was really late at night. I used a app called Maps.me, which is an offline map that allowed me to have a map of the country. And I was just like, okay, I kind of have an idea where I'm going. It's late at night. I don't know if I'm going to have internet or not. I have this map. And it's dark when I landed. And I just decided, okay, I'm going to bike to my guest house. And when I did that, every time at the airport, I have everyone, a crowd, just kind of stand around me like they see pieces of the bike and they see it all come together and they're just like, oh, what? And it had gotten to a point where I felt like I was doing a show, pumping. And it wasn't until a reporter, who I didn't know was a reporter, asked me, what are you doing? Where are you going? What is going on? And later I found out he was one of the writers for a newspaper. And he interviewed me, and I ended up in the local news in Mauritius, and I became an instant celebrity because the island's very small. So when I was biking, I was the girl in the newspaper, the girl biking the world. And so that's like my little claim, my little 15 minutes of fame. It was a great experience. Now when I knew when I kind of basically taught myself how the bike works, I had to figure out, how does my body work? Uh, it's The human body is amazing. It's like, you have to understand, I never did any really fitness workout or any of that. I wasn't really so sporty. I was very active. As you could see, I'm very hyperactive. But I didn't know that my body could just morph. My thighs are just like, I could crack nuts in them. It's just my thighs, my biceps, everything just started changing. And I just thought, wow, I just kept getting stronger and stronger. And breathing was just, it's just amazing. And if you do a tour for at least 1 month, you'll see the transition automatically. And so I had to realize things change. When things change as a woman, menstrual cycles change. I got a crash course in understanding my menstrual cycle and how I had to um, uh, dispose of my products. And I didn't know. I was just like, do I choose tampon, menstrual cup? I never in my life heard of menstrual cup. I didn't know what it was. And when I learned about it was through another bike tourist who said, oh, you're going to take a cup with you when you tour. I was like, let me just Google the cup. And I learned about it and I've never gone back. It's a easier way to dispose. I have um serious cramping and pain and bleeding, like, and when I was touring my body was just like it just didn't know what to do, and I was in pain in the beginning. And the people told me that this was the best way to deal with it, and I learned how to put it in. I'm not going to say it was an instant overnight sensation. It took about 3 months, or 3 cycles to really get an understanding of how to use it. And ever since then, I've been in the same cup for a couple of years now, and I'm not getting rid of it. So if you ever looking into learning more about yourself and how to handle your menstrual cycle, I recommend doing some research on menstrual cup. And if you are using menstrual cup, please pass on the word to other women because I was a grown adult and I never heard of it. And now I tell every teenager, everybody about it. Um, and the so now I've dealt with my menstrual cup. I'm starting to get stronger, and I realize hills, 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 hills. I'm in New York. I'm a sea level baby, and I don't know about hills. When people ask me, "Do you train and how do you train?" It's flat-ish here. I train in a sense of understanding my gears, but I was not prepared for the hills. I realized people live in mountains, mountains, and going up the hills was a tremendous, like, oh, and you have to realize I'm taking a bike that's 18 pounds. I have about probably 50 pounds in the rear. I myself, and I have to take it up a hill. Um, that was I feel like my hills were the greatest moments. Whenever someone tries to mess with me or say something to me, I'm like, I've been up hills. you can't you can't take me down. If a hill in Van in um Vietnam, if hills in Vietnam, if hills in Bolivia didn't take me down, no one's taking me down. So it's not only makes you physically, but also mentally stronger. And I just am more determined now than ever. And this is a photo of a hill that I thought I was going to cry on. I was just like, how am I going to get over to the top and then back down? I had a lot of please universe help me out. Trucks are whizzing by me, even the trucks are struggling to get up. And I was determined. The sight was beautiful. When I reached to the top, I met men, women, children, tourists who came up to me, hugged me, was like, "You're so good, you're so strong. Oh my God, we saw you. Wow." And then I got Coca-Cola handed to me, fruit handed to me, juice handed to me. And I just thought that that is life. When you go up hills, you're thinking, will anyone know? Does anyone notice? Will anyone see me? Would anyone know how hard it took for me to get up here? And when you see that someone saw you and said, here's a soda, here's some snacks, here's something to help you because you had one of the toughest journey that I can do, and I'm supporting you, and that's the greatest feeling. So every time I go up a hill, I always know there's someone on top waiting to pat me on the shoulder and say it's okay. um, Now, learning to carry panniers, I learned to carry people. I had backseat passengers, I call them. And these were my favorite backseat passengers. I had taken Judi is her name also. She is from South Africa, uh, and I was just like, in Johannesburg, and we just talked to her friends, and she's just like, I need to get home. I said, okay, get on the bike. And she was just like, what? And I rode her home on the back, and we had such a great conversation, and she became my seat passenger. And I have a teen from Cambodia who wanted to go to a fruit festival. It was the highlight of the town, a fruit festival, and her father hosted me. And she asked her mother if she can go, and I was interested in going too. And they were just like, well, how are you going to get there? And I didn't want to have them, they wanted to pay or find people to take me there. And I said, no, I'm just going to get on my bike. And she's so light. She was fine in the back. And we rode about 2 miles with her in the back screaming, faster, 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 while texting on her cell phone. So that was great. I've also had men on the back of my bike. I met a couch surfer who I had a host who was also a cyclist, and he didn't ride a bike. And I said, okay, we're going to go on a bike ride, and you sit on the back of my bike. And I basically learned how to carry people on the back of my bike. So I always call them the bike seat passengers. Uh, then we have the local interactions. I am very social. I am very social. I like I like meeting people. I like talking to people. My mom says because I'm the only child, so I needed to blab with someone else besides her. um, and every time I go on the tour, I try to find an event. I try to find a way to meet people. Um, the one thing someone told me is that when you're planning your tour, see if it's near a holiday. Find out what's going on. I actually contacted using a website called Warm Showers, locals in the area, and asked them if they knew of any events that were coming up. And in Brazil, there was my first event was called the World Bike Tour, and I met so many wonderful people. They handed me a T-shirt. I got to ride with them, and that was amazing. That was like my social rides. And I try to find social bike rides or social events when I travel. This is the top photo is in Buenos Aires in Argentina at their critical mass. They are no joke when it comes to critical mass. Every week, on a slow week, can be up to 300 cyclists on a slow day. And a rainy day, it's still 300 cyclists. And it was amazing to be with such a large group and touring Buenos Aires. And it's pretty much, as you know, critical mass is the kind of a peaceful protest and asking for more bike safety. Then in the last one, it says the race was canceled. That was in South Africa. I attended a race. I tried to attempt to do a race and it got canceled, but it was totally worth it. And I had a great time. And I had like my Haiti shirt on there representing in Africa. Uh, the next obsession I have, and many of my friends can see the obsession, is street art. I love it. I love, love, love the creative mind, the genius of it all. I'm at awe at anyone who could create such masterpieces on wall and free for everyone. And if you were to look at any of my albums of touring, you'll see tons of street art photos. This is a mix of being in Puerto Rico. The Cabbage Town was a layover in Atlanta, Georgia. I had a flight layover that was pretty, like 20 something hours between my next connecting flight. And I met a local and took me, and he's like, what do you want to do during a layover? I said, I want to see street art. And we did that. This beautiful piece is in the one on the left with my bicycle is me um, in New Orleans, and New Orleans has such great street art. It's something that's up and coming, but it's beautiful, it's large, and I love street art. So if you're ever touring, just look around, look at the artistry of a community. And a lot of people asked me, well, how do you get around? Like, you learn a language, and um, how do you speak to people? And are you not afraid anyone doesn't understand you? I don't think people who speak English understand me. I don't know if people understand me speaking English, but when I first went to Europe, I went to Spain to try to learn Spanish, and I came out learning Spanglish. I have very broken Spanish, but it was very passable. Um, I also am a background Haitian Creole, a mix of French. Both are broken, but I was very surprised those three languages took me around. This is a photo of a young woman in uh, Vietnam, and I was surprised. I just didn't know that Vietnam had a history with the French, and that there was a generation that speaks French. I didn't know. I learned that when I got to Vietnam. I felt embarrassed about it. But when I got there, and she had a bakery, and the bakery is Paris Bakery in the middle of Vietnam. And I just was like, oh, what is this? And she tried to speak to me, and I couldn't understand. And I tried to speak to her, she couldn't understand. And she was speaking to her son, and she said something in French. And I said, do you speak French? And that was our connection. And from there, she spoke to me in French, and we were able to communicate with each other. And I spent a wonderful afternoon. There are times in your tour where you're like, I got to get to places by 3 o'clock. I got to get there. Don't do that. It never happens. I was supposed to be somewhere in another town. It never happened. I spent the whole time at the cafe, hanging out, talking with her. She gave me word of wisdom. It was a woman who has been through so much, and had told me so much of her story. And I just had literally coffee and croissants, and just listened to her and asked her questions about getting older as a woman, and the decisions I made, and what she thought about it. And it was a very nice, and we did it in French. So it was great. Uh, that is, yeah. Water power. It's a wonderful thing to put your bike on a ferry. If I don't need to fly, I don't fly. If I could catch a ferry, I will. Between in Australia and Melbourne, to go to Tasmania, you can take a ferry. I don't have to fly, pack my bike, do all that stuff. Now the ferry is not it's not a quick trip. It's a slow pace, but I'm not in a rush. So I put the bike on the ferry. And in the Philippines, you could fly or take a ferry overnight. I take a ferry. There's times where my ferry ride leads to my bike being carried on to the top deck or something from a boat that I cross my fingers that we get to where we're going, and my bike is just flattling around on the top deck, and I get there using the ferry. There's ferry connections between the UK and parts of France, and I took a ferry. And so I love enjoying going on ferries and taking my bike on them. I meet such great, wonderful people on on the ferry, and that's like my kind of water power in a sense. But as I mentioned earlier, that I didn't know how to bike or swim. So this is an adult that knows neither. Uh, and I learned to bike, but I learned to bike, and it just took off. But the swimming I learned, and it kind of went, it was crawling. So I thought on my tours, I'm going to learn the water. That photo of me scuba diving was a host who was practicing to be a diving instructor, and used me as a big guinea pig. And I was fine because it was free. So I got to scuba dive in Turkey by my host, and he's a now master's certified. He's doing great. I also took up surfing. I stood up a couple of times. I was happy that I did. And now, and I always end up finding people who are like, let's go surfing. And I'm like, sure. um, the funniest thing I ever had in the water was swimming with seals. Apparently, they thought I was their cousin, and they came after me. They were like, "I see a brown thing. It looks like us." So, there's many times in the Galapagos Islands, I was afraid to get in the water because a seal might hit my butt, thinking somebody they knew. And that was a wonderful a feeling to have with the water, and I enjoy it. I'm not a great swimmer, but I'm now no longer afraid of the water. Um, but the water also gave me a rehabilitation. I love being by the oceans and being by water, and it is a way to recover. If you're doing a long ride, if you get a chance, swim. Relax your legs, relax your arms. Even if you're touring, there still needs a moment for yourself. There still needs a moment where you have to do self-care. You're not a machine. You're not a machine. We're just human. We have to grow, and we have to let the body rest. And I use swimming as a way to just relax and stretch the muscles. Also, I was in a accident in Cambodia. I feel like I came out of Cambodia with battle scars, and I survived it. I had like a dislocated elbow and I went to therapy for a while, so they used tape, and it was swimming that got me back on the bike to continue touring Southeast Asia. You'll see the leg scar there. Everybody picks this photo, but they don't realize this was one of the worst experiences. The leg scar was me not realizing not to be close to stand too close to a muffler because it's hot. And if your skin hits it, it swells and it burns. And I did not know that. And I went too close, and I got a nice little bottle scar there. Um, Funny, just a very quick funny story about that. I didn't know, and I called a friend and I said, "Oh my god, my leg is burning, what's happening?" And she's like, "I think you might be infected, you have to get to a hospital." And unfortunately, I'm in New York, I'm a US citizen. I just thought, I don't have money for no ambulance, I don't know how much it's going to cost me. So with a burning leg, I got on my bike and I pedaled to the hospital. And the guy was like, "How did you get here?" I was like, "I don't know." My bike, I pedaled my way to the hospital. And so that's a story for you, that, don't take the mentality of healthcare is expensive. And, if you need care, get care. But don't be like me in the middle of the night with a burnt leg, dying in pain and pedaling 2 miles to the nearest hospital. But it all worked out, and it was great. And yeah. So I can't do a tour without people. Um, these are the moments that usually make me cry the most. When I first bike tour, I couldn't stop crying. I just wondered, will I ever see these people again? What, what they helped me. They were so kind, you know. I just always assumed and be scared of how people would see me. Will they be scared of me? What I will face on the road, any sexism or racism, or that was my biggest fear when touring. And I, in the beginning, was kind of, closed in. I locked in my emotions. I locked in, was prepared for battle. And it was the people that slowly took that shield down and told me that they were there for me to help me. And these are just a few. I couldn't go through, if I take a picture of everyone. If I had a picture, we'd be 50 slides in of the people who helped me. I had people who I met on the road who biked with me, introduced me to other people in the community, and I stayed and slept in their home. I have a mini family in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, that I still talk to. Her family is growing. She's amazing. and that was one of the highlights, is to see the family. My very sassy Kim, that is just like, uh, she was just amazing and supportive. I had Road Mom. That is my South African mom. Yes, that's her on the bottom. I taught her how to fix a flat. And I had family I met on the road in Bolivia. The people in Bolivia, they looked at me and they're just like, "Oh, you don't have altitude. Like, you don't understand the altitude." I literally thought my spirit was gonna stay in Bolivia. I didn't think I was gonna make it. But I met so many wonderful people on the road who rescued me, who literally scooped me off the ground. The Philippines is amazing. There's people who camped with me. I had Mauritius. I had a young woman who's doing great. She's a tourist and she speaks so many languages. And her family took me camping, and we had a wonderful time. I have Curly Sue over there. She likes to be called Noodles. She taught me, and we hung out and camped. These two wonderful young ladies here on the bottom. I was touring, and I did it. There was one of those times where I had only enough money for food or a place to stay, and I chose food. And I found a police officer who's a town officer, and I slept in the backyard. And I put up my tent, and the kids thought it was a playhouse. And they just came in. They brought their toys. They decorated my tent and didn't want to leave. And they were my great little companions. And I ended up camping with them in their own backyard. I camped with families who, this is a French family with two sons. We accidentally met at a campsite that was having a yoga festival, and we had a great time. And I've stayed with family. So I have like my co-homes, and sharing camping moments with other people are one of these are just a few, as I said, of those experiences when I camp with other people. Um, and I can't forget my bike buddies. As a female, I always was like, "Oh, I can't bike with a man. He's gonna be racing, nah, nah, nah." And I just like, they're not nice. They don't want to wait for you, and you know. And then I met three gentlemen who were my best bike buddies in a tour. Um, we have two from Asia who I met in Thailand, and they broke my idea of what, I did. I was just like, oh, these Asians are going to talk to me. Are they gonna? And they ended up to be such a wonderful experience. John Wang in the middle, I still speak with him. Actually, he ended up coming to New York to tour America, the bike from California to New York, and he stayed in my home for a couple of weeks on after to end his tour. So we end up meeting again, and we still keep in touch. And he's doing great, and he's touring in Puerto Rico. I had a bike buddy who took me around. I always love the experiences where people are just like, "Let me show you my town. Let me show you what makes this place great." And I'm going to show you on a bicycle, and that's great because I have to do no thinking and just take pictures. And so they were kind. We still keep in touch, and so it kind of broke my stereotype of biking with men. I was like, oh, there's some of them, they're okay. That was so bad. So I like to thank my bike buddies. And be respectful. uh it's I say, be respectful, don't be a jerk. Like, you have to understand you're in other people's country. You have to uh, understand their cultures, even if you don't agree or disagree or so. You never know what people's lives are. When you're touring, you're listening, you're learning, you're taking in, but it's not your place to meddle in people's issues and things like that. And you try to be supportive as you can. I met so many people on the road who, I there's some secrets of families that I didn't know. I just mind my business, eat my food, go to sleep, but just be kind. Know that There are people who are there to help you. That was one of my biggest fears. Like, why are people coming up and asking me questions? I don't know them. And then I quickly was like, oh, they're asking, how are you doing? What are you doing? Do you need any help? Um, the one thing that was very funny, uh, I was traveling with another person in Southeast Asia, and my mother's Caribbean, and everything is negotiation. Nothing has a real price. Everything can be negotiated. You may put $5, but is it really $5? Can we get that down to 50 cents? And the best thing you could do in Southeast Asia is haggle. Nothing has a price. And I just haggled. I was like, no, I don't want this. No, I'm moving on. And she was just like, oh my God, how could you just take it? And I'm like, that's actually a sign of respect negotiating. They love the hustle and they'll laugh and they're like, okay, I see your game. All right. I'll give it to you for $5. And it's also like, yeah, and it's sort of disrespectful to just take the price and go. You have to negotiate, say what is the price really. You look at other people buying stuff, you just like, and I went through the whole whole Southeast Asia never paying the actual price. And it was fun, but you do it in a respectful way. You don't do it in a rude way, like, oh, be nasty about it, but you're kind about it, and you understand the culture. I always tell people, always find out in the language how to say please, thank you, you're welcome, have a nice day, hi, bye. Just that type of acknowledgement, just a word of just saying in their language is a sign of respect. And understand that not every country speaks English, and there may be times you're going to have to pull out that Google Translate and have to have patience and be able to communicate. Also, sign language, food, sleep, water. Like, you can always pull those out if anything. But understand that people are in their countries and that they might not be fluent in the English language. Be patient. Use tools like Google Translate or other apps. I carried around a dictionary for a while. In many countries, in Turkey, I carried a dictionary, and I use a dictionary to be able to talk to people, ask questions. Just be aware of that, and you know, just be respectful. So that's me. So I know I rambled. Oh my God, I have story for days. But I thank you for taking the time in your day to listen, come online. I know a lot of people could have done other things, but they chose to come online to hear the story of biking the world. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate you. I appreciate my Moppy Hauer, and for reaching out to me, Cassandra Brooklyn from Escape New York, for recommending me, and also being the person who loves to hear my stories. I love to hear hers. And there was a lot of women solidarity when putting this together, and I really appreciate that. As mentioned in the beginning, that I do have a bike organization. I try to advocate to just bring more cycling awareness in the upper Manhattan area, starting in Harlem, which is why it starts with the word uptown, meaning for Harlem, and to Inwood. And boogie down. You can't have New York without the Bronx. And so boogie down Bronx, and I love it. I live so close to it. The people there are so kind to me. My tours, that I've all my social tours and gatherings have been so memorable in the Bronx, and I like I want to rep it, and there's so many other people who are doing so much, and I want to be there to help them out. If you want to learn more about the organization, see any social rides, what we're dealing with this time. I'm not so active in the social rides, but I do teach adults how to ride. I've taught at least 20 so far. I have my bike, and many of them are adults also who learn to ride, so I understand their struggle, and I continue at least doing that. Um, while we social distance. And if you're wondering where these pictures are coming from, where they're stored, I'm not a photographer, but I like to say and pretend I am. But I love my travel photography that I take of mainly of people. I love people. I love street art. And if you are bored and there's rainy day and you want to see more, I post my pictures on Flickr, and that's my URL. And if you have any question, there's no stupid question, I say. I am glad to be there for anyone who wants to learn more, wants to hear more stories. Buy me a beer. I talk for days. You can always email me at judesire@yahoo.com. I'm open. I'll get to you. I'll message you and just reach out if you have any questions. So that's that. I, Yay.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Judi, that was truly like one of the most exciting and inspirational presentations I've heard, and maybe ever, but in a really long time, especially like my lack of inspiration to get outside when we're stuck inside. Like, that was awesome. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
We have some questions that came in throughout the chat, so I'm just going to throw them at you and you can answer them.
Okay.
Yeah, let me throw in here. What resources did you use to research, various countries, specifically Southeast Asia? Blogs, websites, anything you'd recommend there?
So my motto is plan nothing, expect everything. I don't research. It's unfortunate. I think I don't want to get spoiled. I want to learn directly. Like when I said I met a woman in Vietnam who told me about the influence of the French, and I didn't know, and I could have probably searched the web and seen all of that and got one version, but to see someone who's still present and speaks the language and understands of that time was more powerful than anything that I can find online. So when I tour to go to different countries, it usually is the price of the plane ticket that gets me there. So I'm like, can I afford to go to this country?
Yeah.
And I use Skyscanner as my way to kind of understand the pricing. Before ever buying a ticket, go directly to the flight company's website and check to see if there's any bike fees. Sometimes people think, oh, with the bike fee, there's cheap ticket. And then you get there and you realize you could have just bought another ticket that looked more expensive but didn't have a bike fee. So always like double, triple check and have your calculator nearby. And that's really the biggest research I do, is how much things are going to cost me.
Got it. Crazy. And what about now that we're in COVID, do you have trips planned? What does that look like now for you?
So I usually bike a lot to Westchester because I feel like I need to go to a distance. So I bike up to Westchester. I'm still this would be the first time in 10 years I wouldn't be biking on my birthday.
Oh.
So I'm like, oh, I have to figure out what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So I basically just, I bike to Westchester. I grab a couple of people, like I have a friend. We ride together. I explore the city. Now that it's empty-ish, like I explore my own city, and yeah, I haven't done any research yet. I'm still waiting. And to be honest, even before COVID, usually my ticket purchases are made the week before my birthday. So I never really did any planning anyway.
There you go. You're like already seasoned for that.
Yeah.
What about one more too? When you're traveling, when we can travel again, or even if you're traveling more local, where do you keep your bike when you're sightseeing? Do you always have it with you? Are you bringing a lock when you're going abroad?
Yes, I carry a lock. There's many countries I could say that very safe. You leave your bike. Da, da, da. Ah, I carry my bike lock. I have a folding bike lock that makes it easier to carry. I don't use a U lock because they tend to just be junky and move around on the bike, um, and most of the times it gets questioned or flagged when you fly with it.
Mm.
The folding lock from Abyss folding lock is very good. When you lock your bike, there's many times I've been to countries where people babysit my bike. They're like, I will watch it. And I
Nice.
remember going to a grocery store, and this guy, the security, was like, I'll watch it. And I told him my story about traveling, and I saw him having a crowd around my bike telling my story. And I thought, well, this bike is going to be secured. Everyone's watching it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
uh, so many times it's like right next to me when I'm eating. It's right next to me, or especially when I am fully loaded, I try to get things that I need the day before, so I wouldn't have to worry about locking up a bike.
Got it. And what about a helmet? Is that something you bring every time when you're going?
That is a great question. I forgot to put that in my slide. Um, a helmet, you can see in one of my photos I did wear a helmet, and I feel like there was times where cars are whizzing by me and I'm just like, I'm gonna just put this on. you know but then there's other countries where a helmet is a sign of privilege. A
Mm.
helmet is a costly item. A helmet distinguishes you as a different level of a cyclist, where people feel that you may be elite enough and not to be talked to.
Oh,
um,
wow.
yeah, so many times I don't bike with my helmet just for that. I don't want to feel that, oh, I'm so, because you have to realize some of these helmets, if you look at prices, they're like $100. A decent
Yeah,
helmet is $50. And so for many people in many countries, that could be, a month, wage. And
right.
when you wear a helmet, it kind of separates you. And some people are a bit nervous talking to you because maybe they think that they're beneath you. And many times I don't bike with the helmet because of that.
Right.
But I'm not going to be reckless in the street either. There's not many times I'll put the helmet on, but most of the times I ride without a helmet.
Got it. That's something I've never thought about before.
Yeah.
And you talked about like being respectful and whatever, learning about the culture and being respectful. And I feel like that fits into it, right?
Yeah,
Interesting.
and I don't even have a jersey. So if you look at my pictures, it's just like my bike short that has no name, no brand. I don't want to, flag it out. It's just a regular old bike shorts and a regular old T-shirt. I bike just that way, and that's also being respectful in a sense that I'm just saying that don't think you can't talk to me. You can always speak with me, and I'm normal. I'm okay. And it makes people more want to speak with you if you look more in normal clothing than suited up, I would say, with the jerseys and all.
Yeah. Interesting. Great. I got one more question for you. Let's see here. Um, somebody asked you pack light, you bring your essentials. What is like a creature comfort, one of the things you bring to like that maybe isn't totally necessary but you feel like you have to have to treat
Uh,
yourself?
when I first started bike touring, it was Nutella.
I don't blame you.
I had a jar of Nutella, and I was told that your angriest moment, or the moments you make the worst decisions, is when you're hungry. You're
Yeah.
like, "Ah," you get hangry, and I carried a Nutella, and every time I had that moment, I'm like, excuse me. Like I just need a scoop of Nutella.
Yeah, hold one
And
second.
so it's like, let me just get my scoop of Nutella before we have this conversation. And so Nutella was one of those things that I carried around. Most of the times, I have kids who give me a toy or a bracelet, and I would carry that around with me, and then I'll put it somewhere safe, and I feel like that person is traveling with me spiritually, and I carry those little knickknacks around with me in a little Ziploc bag, and
Yeah.
It helps out. I carry that. I have a lot of souvenirs I carry also that do nothing but look pretty in my house because I don't want to touch it. So
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
things that I don't even use, but they get carried along with me through the whole tour. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I know one of my souvenirs from this talk is just going through your Flickr page, so I'm super excited to check them out.
Yeah.
And yeah, anything else you want to add or end with?
Well, I just want to add that you don't have to worry about, oh, do I have to train for a tour? I usually say no, because you're going to end up figuring out. And like I said, your body is amazing. It'll adjust. It'll figure it out. Just keep
Mhm.
going. Don't think that am I a certain weight, a certain height, or do I need? The most thing I would tell someone is at least be able to do 60 miles. Just
Mm.
just be able to do at least 60 miles. If it takes you 12 to 16 hours to finish 60 miles, then that's fine. You just need to be able, you don't have to do it in 20 minutes, you know, but at least be able to do at least 60 miles, because you'll find in many countries, it's about an average 60 miles to the next town.
Mm.
There's sometimes the next town is 100 miles, which usually for me is a lot. And I start my day at 5 in the morning.
Wow.
So it's interesting when I'm here and I have to go to work and I'm like, it's 9. I gotta get up. But on my touring days, I'm up at 5 in the morning
Yeah. Oh
to get a
man.
ride done.
Yeah.
So be able to, expect to do at least 60 miles in one day. I would recommend as the one thing before going on a tour to do. And after that, your body will just figure it out.
Cool. That's great advice. So thank you so much. Can't thank you enough for every story you shared with everybody. So yeah, keep posted on future adventures, and we can't wait
Yes.
to see you out on the road.
All right.
All right. Talk to you soon, Jude.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Bye.